All right, Ameshia, let me start with you about the Walker-Warnock debate. Herschel Walker placed expectations very low, saying he was going to get destroyed in the debate. How important a debate do you think this was from Warnock's perspective?
From Warnock's perspective, I think this was an extremely important debate. First of all, it was the only one that Herschel Walker was actually going to attend or be a part of. And as you can recall, it was during that week when there was every other story that was released. Major media, mainstream media, was about Herschel Walker, whether it was about the access abortions, questions around his past relationships and things like that, as well as some of the abuses that have come to light for him and his candidacy. But because Herschel Walker set the expectations extremely low, it was very easy, I think, for him to rise above to a certain extent. Walker had a lot more to prove in that debate than I believe Herschel Walker did, because everybody knows Herschel Walker at this point. The expectations are what they are. I thought that the senator could have actually performed better, just because the one thing that we remember out of that debate is honestly that Herschel Walker didn't fall flat on his face. It's not that there was a great landing spot for the current Senator Warnock. He could have done better. I honestly think he did better in the second debate when he was literally debating an empty chair for Herschel Walker than he did when he was actually debating Herschel himself.
Matt Gorman, how have voters, in your view, responded since that debate? How have the polls moved?
You know, not very much. If you talk to folks that are watching this race very intently, working on it, when Walker had a series of negative articles over the summer, his polls would dip a little bit, then come back to where they were. With the abortion stories that have come and the debates stories that have come, it's really lied pretty flat. I think people have tended to put their jerseys on in this 50-50 type state. I think this will be the closest race we see on election night. I think most folks on our side tend to think this will probably end up in a runoff, barring Brian Kemp getting, say 7 or more points in his race against Stacey Abrams to kind of drag Herschel over the finish line. But I think this is going to be extremely close.
And explain to us how the runoff would work. What do you need to avoid the runoff?
So you need to avoid the runoff on election night, you need 50% plus 1. If you remember correctly, in 2020, neither Senate race got that. So we ended up with a runoff in January. This year, it'd be shorter. This would be December 5th. It would be just the two candidates. It would be Warnock and Walker. And whoever won that runoff, 50% of the vote, would be the senator. Because
there is a third candidate who's got something like 4% or so of the vote right now. Ameshia, if there is a runoff, good for Warnock or good for Herschel Walker from your perspective?
First of all, I think that I would probably bet an organ on it at this point, that there is going to be a runoff for this Senate race, largely because of the amount of split ticket voters that we seem to be appearing out of that Georgia race. It's tough because in a runoff, typically Democrats and Democratic voters stay home more than they do in the general. So I think that there would be a much harder uphill battle for Senator Warnock in terms of turning out those same demographics a second time, particularly getting those younger voters interested and involved, as well as pushing out the minority vote, specifically the Black vote. Again, in state after state, runoff races are extremely difficult in getting those key demographics to show up again. So I think that in and of itself will present quite a bit of a challenge for Democrats, but I also think that they would align themselves in bringing the holy trinity of Democrats back to Georgia, be it whether that is former President Obama, President Biden himself, as well as Kamala and anyone else that they need to pull in the A-team essentially to get those voters out.
Let me really quickly put up the numbers here. According to 538, which weights the polls more, Warnock leads a slim lead, 46.9 to 45.3. And Real Clear Politics, which weighs all the polls equally, has Walker up 46.8 to 46.2. So we shall see. This is going to be a tight one.